Hey guys, today we got a pretty special video because we have a FlashForge Creator Max. Now what makes this printer quite interesting is that it has a dual hot end setup where it can print two different colors or materials at the same time with two different nozzles. So this should be quite interesting. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let's get started. Alright, so I've done a few videos with FlashForge printers, and they definitely build really nice, mostly completely assembled printers where it's pretty much ready to go out of the box. So we can see the box that it comes in, it's quite large. What it's called, Creator Max. The weight, 21.5 kilograms. This is the size here in millimeters. So let's go ahead and lay it down on the side. You guys can see the blue tape that FlashForge uses. If it's ever been opened, you will know. Alright, so let's go ahead and cut the tape up. So as we open the box, we have a little packet here of a few things like our manual, extra bed, stickers, and our SD card. We'll check this out a little closer in a second. So they're using a hard type styrofoam. So there are two tubes, and these look like they're for the filament guide tubes. Since this is a dual extruder setup, we have two of them. Now every time I open a box, I keep thinking that maybe I'm doing it the wrong way, because I always open the top, which is good because you know you get to your manual and whatnot else that's important. But it seems like it would be better to open the back to have the printer right side up. But in any case, tip this thing over and raise the box up. And sure enough, our printer is upside down and the other piece of styrofoam is left in the box. So no big deal really, but you could open it from the bottom and it'd probably be a little easier to deal with. Let's go ahead and flip it one more time. And we'll take the top foam off. And as we can see, it's completely plastic wrap. Alright, so we do have a door here in the front and it is magnetized. And there is shrink wrap over this. And we can see there's more things in here. I can see that there's another clear acrylic cap, and we also have a bunch of stuff up here. All right, so let's start from the top. We have a connection here to our hot end assemblies. So I guess we will have to connect this. So we have a styrofoam insert that comes out. So it looks like these are our spool holders, and there are two of them for dual feeding. And then over here, it looks like we have all our wiring and also other pieces. All right, so let's go back down and get these other pieces out. So it looks like this whole piece just comes out the front. There's a styrofoam with a full spool of red PLA filament. Very cool that they include a whole spool of it. And this is our top cover that'll go on the very top. And we have little cutouts here for the tubing to go through. And on the top face of it, we have a FlashForge sticker. Pretty nice, high quality one. Oh, that looks pretty cool. All right, so we have a little bit more foam inside. There's one here in the back by the lead screw. So now we can go ahead and pull the bed up. And when we do that, we can go ahead and pull our styrofoam out the bottom. Maybe need to go up a little more. All right, and so now that everything's out, we can kind of see the printer a little better of what it looks like. There's little wires here. Tuck those down for now. So for the next part, we need to look at the manual and see how it all goes together. But before we do that, let's take a look at what it comes with. So we get a power cord, a USB cable to connect from the printer to the computer, a bracket of some sort. I guess it's not a bracket, it's a parts cooling fan duct. I guess we'll have to install that, and it comes with a few little bolts. We also get a little baggie of tools, some grease, a wrench, and an extra knob, and some short PTFE tubings. So here we have the manual. There's a 16 gig SD card that's branded ScanDisk. We also get 2 extra build surfaces for our bed. Very nice that they include this. Here we have a thing called special sheet, and this is just for bed leveling to the nozzles, and it's just the right size to go between the 2 nozzles to do spacing. And here we have the user's manual. So it is black and white, shows us all of the parts that are included, an overview of the printer and what everything is. The system here, unpacking the printer, and here we have hardware assembly. So there's really no step-by-step, it just kind of shows you how to use everything. So I guess the hardware assembly is our instructions here of how to get this thing together. All right, so looking on top here, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our hot end assembly. If you guys can see, there's 2 threaded holes that will line up with these holes. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna simply set the whole thing over and it's gonna line up. And the little baggie with the fan duct is gonna have the bolts we need. And so there's 2 longer bolts and 1 short one. The 2 longer bolts are gonna go underneath through our bracket into the hot end assembly. So let's go ahead and grab our Allen wrench out of this bag. All right, so we started one and the other. And we can go ahead and snug them up real good. And you don't want to go too crazy tight because this is plastic. All right, and that should make this really solid. It feels really good. So the next part of our manual, it says we need to remove our fan so we can install the fan duct into it. So here we have our fan, and it's actually quite a large fan. Let's go ahead and undo it. So that just comes right off. Now we can grab our fan duct and connect it to the fan just like that. And so now it's all going to go back together. We can see the 2 bolts that will go back into the fan, and then the 3rd little bolt, which came with the duct, will go into here. All right, and so all 3 of them are tight. Now before you tighten these up, leave them loose so this can move around, because this little fan duct has to click in a certain place down there before it seats right. So tighten the main fan last. And so this is this step here. Here you can see how the bolts go. So for the next part, let's install our spool holders. So if we look at here at the back of the printer, we can see that there's 2 slots, and those are going to accommodate our spool holders. So we're simply just going to insert it into the slot and then go down. So nothing too complicated here, very simple actually. And that's what they look like. So they do move around a bit, but that doesn't really technically matter. So, and I am noticing that these are quite a bit more narrower than a typical spool like this one here. If I put it on, it doesn't go all the way in there. Well, that's kind of interesting. And so for the last step, we just need to install our guide tubes. And that's these 2 we saw in the beginning. So they simply click into these grooves here. Just like that. Go ahead and do this other one. So our filament will go out into the tube, and then the other end will go into the extruder. So the one on the right will go to the right side, and the one on the left side. Now we do still have this top. Let's go ahead and try that out. So it should just go right over these tubes. And there's these 4 corners on each side that the top goes into. And that is to, I guess, preserve the heat from coming out. But because there's cutouts in the back, I'm not sure how that is effective. But in any case, I guess to make this a more of a enclosed printer, they do have this top here. And when you're printing higher temperature filaments, every little bit of heat helps. All right, so let's take a closer look at this printer. So here on the top, we can see what it looks like. We have the cover, a nice logo, how our tubing and wiring comes out the back. So we do have a dual hot end with 2 extruders, and I guess 2 of everything, and including 2 separate nozzles there on the bottom. So there is only 1 cooling duct for the nozzle on the left, and the one on the right doesn't seem to have one. And so the way the axes work is you got rails that it slides on. Same thing for the Z-axis, 2 rod rails. And here we have our X-axis motor, and our Y-axis motor is back there, and it has a belt that goes to the top that connects to these brackets on each side, and that runs the Y-axis. Maybe you guys can see the belt moving. So our X-axis switch is there, our Y-axis is in that corner, and our X-axis is right there. So here we have the build plate, and it is a pretty decent print size, not large, but definitely reasonable for most prints. And the build platform does not appear to be removable, so it's stationary. But the build plate is heated. We can see the plugs underneath, and it adjusts on 3 pivot points. So another thing that's kind of interesting is the wiring that's going to the bed. It's just kind of open air here. I'm going to tuck them back into the inside there so they're not dangling around everywhere. And I feel like they should have put maybe some kind of shroud or protection around them. In any case, maybe that's not a concern. So yeah, we have 2 walls on each side, and the walls are all plastic, including the back one. But there is a steel frame on all the corners of the printer. So as we go out, we can see we have this nice clear acrylic door, and it is magnetized. On the left side on the front of the printer, we have the logo. It says Creator Max. And here we have our touchscreen. Go ahead and pull this protector off. And on the bottom of the printer, we have rubber feet all around the 4 corners. So if we go to the right side of the printer, here we can see this is where we're going to plug in our USB cable to the computer. And also our SD slot is here, and it is a full-size SD card. So that's really nice to see. And over here, it looks like we have a little reset button. So on the left side, there's nothing much going on here. We do have these really nice handles where we can lift the printer on both sides. And on the top here, this piece is metal, and it's part of the metal frame. So here we can see what the back looks like. So we have the wires and the tubes coming out. So the wire goes into this middle channel and the tubes clip right here on both sides, which point here towards the spool holder. So our filament will go into here and then into the extruders. So the back is quite clean overall. Here we have a manufacturing label, and below that, this is where we're going to plug in our power cord, and this is our power switch. All right, so let's go ahead and plug this cord in, and it is quite a thick cord. So I'm going to hit the power button, and we can see the logo here come up. And our printer boots up. And the first thing I'm noticing that there is a light inside, and you guys can see it turned on. So that's really nice. So on the touchscreen here, we can see that this is our print button, preheat button, and tools. So this is going to read our SD card. And by the way, it does have internal memory. This is our preheat button, so let's click that. So we can see it's 230 on both nozzles and 100 on the platform. So that seems a little hot for the platform. Let's just make it 70 for now. We'll click start, and it should start heating up. And we actually have a little graph here showing the progress of each one. So it looks like our nozzles are heating, but our platform is not. And I'm guessing once these are hot, the platform will start heating. All right, so we're going to let that heat. I'm going to go back. So let's check out these tools. So we have filament, level, home, manual, settings, setup, and about. So filament is going to be using our extruder, and you can see there's both of them. There's a left and the right. That's leveling the bed, which we'll be doing next. And we also need to hit this home button to make sure all of our axes work. Manual button is going to give us access to moving everything independently. And we have a settings here. Here we can choose our language, and I think that's touchscreen adjustment, factory reset, fan on, Wi-Fi, and pulley. So I'm not going to mess with any of this, but if you wanted to use Wi-Fi, they do have that option here too. So here we have the status of the printer and about. Here we have the name of the machine, the firmware, the print volume, which is 227 by 148 by 150. The amount of usage this printer had, which is 3 hours, which is interesting because I just turned it on. It must be factory testing. And tool count too, which is the 2 nozzles. All right, so that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and click the home button, and let's see if all of our switches work. So our X works, our Y works, and our Z works. So for the next part, let's level the bed, but before we do that, we need to run these knobs down a bit. That way we can press the build plate and make sure our nozzle is not going to hit the platform as we start to level. So I'm going to hit the level button, and it's going to move into position. And we're going to grab our special sheet and use it to level the bed. So we can see here that it's way too loose. So I'm gonna raise it up by loosening the knob. So right when we get a little drag, I'm also going to check them individually. They seem to be about both equal, so that's a good sign. Then on the screen here, we're going to click next, and it's going to go to the next point, and we're going to do the same thing down there. All right, so that feels pretty good. Click next. And by the way, guys, you're going to need to do this quite a few times because it's not going to be perfect the first time. The more you adjust it, it changes angles everywhere on each side. So like right now, this is a little tight, so we need to go down a bit. All right, that feels good. Click next and go straight to the middle, and the middle's a little tight also. And now we're going to click finish. But I'm going to go ahead and do this process at least 3 or 4, maybe even 5 times to make sure my bed is ultra level, because it's quite important that it's level, because if you don't get it right, you're going to have trouble when starting putting down your prints. So whenever preheating the nozzles, I realized that there's a toggle switch here for on and off, and the platform was actually off. So if we turn it back on and click start, we can see that our platform comes in, and it's showing the temperature of it right now. So I started preheating it earlier and realized that it was just a toggle. So that's kind of good that you can individually choose what you want to preheat or not. So let's say if you weren't going to use both of the nozzles, you technically don't need to preheat both of them. So all right, guys, so I think I got my build platform pretty level. So let's go ahead and grab this SD card and plug it into the side of the printer, and then we'll go to print. Here we can see that it sees our SD card, and looks like we do have some files on there. Okay, so here I see it says test files. Click on that. Looks like we have a few little things we can print. So we have a little model for ABS, PLA, and also a dual color cube here. All right, cool. So let's start with PLA first, and we'll see how that goes. And then we'll go to the multicolor, and also we'll try out some ABS printing in this machine. But before we can print anything, we need to get our filament into the printer. It looks very nice. Now FlashForge uses special spools that has a very narrow middle, and that's purposely for fitting on their spool holders. So we want to cut the filament on an angle so it feeds through easier. But yeah, the spool will just literally clip into here, and it literally perfectly fits in here. The only thing that doesn't make any sense, honestly, is, you know, the way this filament goes there. It's kind of way too close to this spool. Now we can pull this up a bit, and even more technically if we wanted to, all the way up here. to make it where it has a little better route. Honestly, I wish they would design this a little different, maybe go lower or something else, but in any case, it does go into tubing, and I'm using this tube here because this is the side with the fan duct, and I'm guessing this is the extruder that we're using for the single filament printing. So I'm going to go ahead and push it all the way through until I hit something. All right, so it looks like there's some resistance. But yeah, this is how the filament goes on the back. I do have a smaller spool that could go here maybe. Well, okay, yeah, so it does fit in here perfectly. Later, when we print our little cube, we can use this white here as our second color. So I'm just gonna leave it there until we're ready to print. So here's where the complexities start to begin. Now, because we have to get to our extruder, we can't really do it through here anyhow, so we need to take this cover back off. So it does come off quite easy, but now you probably don't even want to put this cover on unless you're really printing ABS or whatever other filaments that require more heat. So we're just gonna leave the cover off for now. And this is the tube that has the red filament in. And we can see the end of it right there. So all we gotta do is take it out, and then we're gonna manually feed it in there. Now there is a little lever here on the extruder. If you push down on it, you should be able to get past through it into the teeth, and that will grab it. So once it grabs it, we can put the tubing back in. All right, so now we're gonna hit on tools and then filament. And here we can see left load and unload. So we're gonna click a load left, and that's gonna start up the extruder. And we can see the filament is pumping out of there. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on done, and that stops it, and that's how we purge the nozzle. So let's go ahead and go back to our SD card, go to test files, and start this PLA print here. So once we click on it, we can see we have a few options. We can copy, delete, or print. Now if you click copy, it's going to put it into the printer. That way you don't have to use it off of the SD card, but since we have the SD card in it, we can just print it from there. So I'll just click print, and there it goes. So the printer is starting. So it's heating up the nozzle to 225. All right, and there it goes. Well, let's hope everything's gonna be good with our level. And it appears to be okay, I think. Yeah, so far it looks good actually. It's probably a little hard for you guys to see because of that light from the top. It's kind of overexposing everything. But it looks like we started and everything looks good. But I'm gonna bring out my microphone so you guys can hear the printer. It does have stepper sound noises. So it's not silent. You can definitely hear the motors running, and obviously some fan noise also. So yeah, it looks like it's boogieing away. So I went ahead and unplugged the little light that's on the top here, and we can see a little better of how our print is looking like. So let's take a closer look at our screen. So on the top we have the file name, the printing time, which is 12 minutes, the left extruder, which is at 220, the right extruder, which is at idle, and then our build platform as 50C. Here we have a progress bar, which is at 0, and on the bottom we have hot buttons, stop, pause, and some more settings. So let's click on the settings. If we click that, we can see the only option we have is to change filament. So if you wanted to change your filament in the middle of the print, you could do that. But that's pretty much it. So you can't adjust anything else. Everything has to be pre-adjusted in the slicer. And there is no option of turning the light on and off. So if for some reason you didn't want it, like right now I don't because I'm filming, all you do is just unplug it and it's right behind this channel here. So, all right, so I'm just gonna let this thing print and we'll see what it prints out. All right guys, so our first print is done and it took 1 hour and 26 minutes. So the bed cooled off pretty much. Let's see if we can pop this thing off. So yeah, it's not gonna come off that easy. So having a little spatula kind of like this would definitely help out. I'm kind of surprised they didn't include one. Well, let's go ahead and see if we can take it off now. All right, so yeah. So yeah, it comes off pretty easy once you get it going. And there we go. So it did print on our raft and it's not coming off at all. So I guess those settings were not done right. But in any case, let's go ahead and look at the model so we can see some vibrations here. So this is our y-axis and this is our x-axis. So we can see our x-axis looks quite a bit smoother than our y. So here's the other side of the x, a little bit smoother, but not bad on the y either. And here at the round part, all the layers are sitting pretty good. This does look like it's printed at 0.2 layer height. So overall looks pretty good, and our top looks good too. So as far as the print structure overall, it looks quite good and feels very strong. So not a bad start. I'm actually quite excited to print our next print, which will be the multicolored. So let's click on the print, SD card, test files, and click the PG cube here. So it says it's going to take 3 hours and 22 minutes. I'm going to click the print button, and there we go. So the bed is coming up. So for some odd reason, our bed is heating up to 105. I don't know why it needs to be that hot, but I guess I'm just gonna leave it. Now, unless it's thinking that it's gonna be printing ABS, maybe that's what's going on. And there's nothing I can do to change that because it doesn't let me. All right, so that's probably gonna take a while for it to warm up to that temperature. All right, guys, so as you can see, it actually hit 105, 106 now, and it's heating up the extruders. So that's quite impressive that it can go that hot, and it actually didn't take too long, maybe like 4 minutes. Well, I guess right here it says 5 minutes total, so it didn't seem that long overall, so I guess about 5 minutes. Now it's 6. Quite impressive that it can go to 105 with no issues. So I do have white in the other extruder. You can see the first extruder is extruding, and the other one is kind of oozing out a bit. So it does have white filament. I don't know why it's oozing out. So for now it's just building the raft, so once it actually starts printing the model, we should see color transitions between the two nozzles. Alright guys, so it looks like we've transitioned to white, and it's printing on top of the red. So far it looks like everything's going quite good. So yeah, we can see the second nozzle printing, and the one on the left was actually seeping out. Okay, so it looks like we're printing with the first nozzle now. Now definitely a problem I see is that the white one is seeping right now. It's literally seeping as that one's printing. So yeah, that's not very good, because it's getting, you know, all over the place where it's not supposed to be. So I'm not sure if that's adjustable or what. Okay, so now we're printing with the white one again. Alright, well, I'm not gonna say too much until it's done, and we'll see what it comes out like. But according to what I see, I'm not sure if it's gonna be all that great. It does look quite messy right now. So as it's printing and I'm looking at it, it's actually printing a wall around the model that it's printing. So I guess that's how it cleans itself out, is against that wall. And it seems to be working, so now that I'm looking at it, it's actually not looking bad. Kind of interesting, the method that it has to clean itself out. So I guess it purges around the wall, and then it prints to make sure it's going to have a continuously good feed. Seems to work, so we'll see what the model looks like once it's finished. Alright guys, so our multi-print is done, and yeah, it looks kind of like a pretty huge mess in here. But the interesting part is the part itself actually doesn't look too bad. So the technique it uses to clean itself is quite barbaric, it seems like. So there's a lot of seepage, and you know, the seepage kind of stays outside the walls, and you know, some inside also. But in any case, let's go ahead and try to take this off. So it does come off quite easy, so that's good. And so this is what we are looking at. So it did make a raft, and I hope I can get it off. So you guys can see the multicolored cube actually doesn't look too bad. There's quite a few hairs on it touching it, but it does appear to be that it might clean up quite well. Now we might be able to adjust the settings where it's not seeping as much, maybe a little more retraction, or I don't know, I'm not sure exactly what we can do to make this better. So I'm going to try to break this cube loose. I have a feeling this is not going to work that well. So I'm going to just grab some snips and snip around it. Alright, so we got some progress. I want to see if I can rip the raft off completely. Yeah, it's not coming off easy. So before I clean it off anymore, let's go ahead and look at it a little closer. So we can see there's quite a bit of little hairs everywhere. And most of them do come off quite easy, looks like, but I can see some white in the red, so that's not a good sign. And more white in the red here, not terrible, but it is there. And then we got these really hard lines here, and this is our raft that needs to be pried off. And at the top actually looks pretty decent, and there's not much bleeding on the top. A little bit you can see in the white, the red, but no white at all in the red, and a little bit of red in the white. Not bad. All right, so we did print a color print successfully. Now this was not the best execution, but it still worked. And the thing that kind of surprises me is the slice here. Not only was it too hot at 220, and this probably caused extra stringing and all this mess here, but the thing that shocked me was the bed. It was at 110, which might have been okay to use on ABS obviously, but for PLA, and I can't imagine somebody doing their first test print with anything else but PLA. But in any case, that was definitely not good there. So, and that probably contributed to a lot more seepage and leakage also from the PLA, because you know, PLA was just way too overheated. In any case, I'm going to clean this off and we're going to take a look at it towards the end of the video closer. And right now what I want to do is clean off the bed. And speaking about the bed, it's been working flawlessly, so everything's sticking very well and popping off quite easy also. So yeah, so I guess it's working out better than I thought it would in the beginning. So for the next part, I'm going to replace the red PLA, and we're going to print the other file that was included on the SD card in ABS. All right, so I loaded the ABS filament in. Let's click on print test files. Well, I guess I made a mistake because here it says PG Write ABS, so I guess I should have loaded the ABS on the other hot end on the right side. Let's click it anyways. So if that's the case, I'm going to flip the filament around. But what I'm going to do with this print is I want to copy it. So instead of clicking print, let's click copy. And it's going to ask to copy the model. I'm going to say yes. And so it's copying the file, so it's putting it on the internal memory. Okay, so copy success. Push OK. Now let's go back. And I'm going to pull the SD card out. And we'll go to print and then internal. And we can see it's right there. So let's go ahead and fire this thing up. We'll click print. Going to be heating up the right extruder. So I'm going to quickly change the filament around. So the nozzle is warming up to 225 and the bed is to 110 again. Now for ABS, this obviously makes sense. Since this machine has an enclosure, we can close this door and also put this top back on to retain the heat. And so this is not too hard to put on. It just slides in. Make sure all of our tubes and cables go through the back. And the top just pops right on. So with that bed heating up to 110, we should be able to retain more heat, all these covers around. And by the way guys, there is quite a bit less noise with the cover on and the door closed. All right, so it looks like we're starting our print. All right, so it appears to be like everything's okay and it started. So we are printing ABS now. And the bed being at 110 degrees is going to help us keep the ABS from warping. And we'll see how good that does. And I wanted you guys to hear how loud it is with the door closed and the lid on top. It's quite a bit quieter. But the stepper noises are still coming through. And there is some vibrations of just vibrating a bit, I'm not sure what, just the movements of the axes. But overall it is quite loud, so keep that in mind. Alright, so we started this ABS print and everything looks great so far. So this looks like it's going to be the same object we printed first with the red PLA. So we'll see how this one comes out. Alright, so our ABS print is done, and just by looking at it, it looks really good. So let's see how easy it comes off. The bed is completely cooled now. Oh, not too bad. And so this is what our print looks like, and I'll have to say guys, it actually looks quite a bit better than the PLA model. And this is also in black, so it's quite a bit more revealing. So we can see it's pretty good on the walls. And then as we go up, look how nice those layers are sitting. And the round part is also very uniform. And this is ABS, so it's quite a bit harder to print and it warps. And as you guys can see, we had no curling or anything funny at all. So it turned out perfect. So as far as the chamber heating up, it seems to work very good, able to retain the heat and not warp, looks like. So here's a quick look with both of them together, side by side. The red is PLA and the black is ABS. And you can see that looks like they were sliced the same way, just the temperatures are different. Alright, so that's a nice sign, and we can see that this printer has no issues with printing single colors, and also ABS looks like is doing good too. So for the next part, what I want to do is I want to slice my own print, specifically a benchy, and also print that in ABS. Alright guys, so here we are at the computer and I have the SD card plugged in, and here we can see all the files that are in there. So here we have some kind of extruder STL, I guess maybe an extra part. We have the flash print folder, this is where we're going to install our slicer. Happy 3D package, okay, not sure what that's all about. Looks like that's for Android or Windows. We got the test files, the ones we printed, and our PDF user guide if you want to go through this a little bit more in depth, how to use the machine. But what we need right now is the flash print software. So they have a few options here, but I am using a Mac and they do have Windows also. I'm going to open up the Mac version. So the zip file unzipped, and this is what we got, flash print package. Let's go ahead and open it. So it looks like we have a little wizard here to install. Agree to the license. Installation is 48.8 megabytes and it's installing. And there it goes. And it looks like it is finished. So we should be ready to go. So I'm going to open up my Launchpad, and sure enough, here we find Flash Print. Let's go ahead and open it. So there is a newer version available. So I'm just going to skip the update for now. So here we're going to choose the printer that we have. So we have the Creator Max. Click OK. So it gives you a little tutorial here of what everything does. So we can see here is our build plate and our volume. I'm going to go ahead and throw the benchy in here, and we can see the model right in the middle. So if we click on it, we will select it, it kind of highlights it. Now this blue bar here shows where the front is. So we're on view right now. If we click on move, we can actually move the benchy around by just clicking on it, or we can put in the parameters here. Same way for rotating, and we can scale it. We can also cut it. And here we have the dual extruder control, so we can set this to the right or the left. So if you click on this, you can see it changes color. So our left extruder is green and our right is this light gray color. So on the top we have a load button. This is where you're going to load in the models. And then we have supports. So if you click on support, so here you have some support options. If you click on that, you can kind of give it some more specifics, and they have different kinds of tree-like and linear. Let's leave it on tree-like. So if we click on auto supports, what it's going to do is it's going to generate these supports there. So, and you can play around with these parameters to kind of fine-tune them. So for the benchy, we don't need support, so I'm going to clear it, and that's pretty much it, guys. So we're going to click back here, and for the last button up here is we have print. So if we click that, here we can slice the model. So if you have your printer connected to Wi-Fi or through the cable, you can print it after slicing it. So here we have the machine, the material we're using, which is ABS, and it does specify for left or right. Supports are enabled, but we do not need them, so we're going to disable it. And raft is disabled, definitely don't want to use raft. So the resolution is set to standard, and here we have a few more options, wall or brim. Now the wall is for our multicolor, just like we saw in our other print, how it builds a wall around it and kind of blocks the oozing from the nozzles. And brim just helps the model stick better to the build plate by making a layer around it. So if you click on more options here, you can really adjust everything a little better. And so I'm going to go ahead and adjust this. So I'm going to put the layer height to 0.16. First layer is 0.27. I guess that's fine. Here we have more tabs of everything we can adjust. So the next, the shells. So here you can set how many perimeters there are on the shells. I like to print with 3. Solid top layers is 3 also. I like to bump this up to 5 or 6. Let's just make it 5, and we'll make the bottom 4. Infill is at 15, which is usually fine. And this is the type of infill. And it is going to combine the infill every 2 layers. So here we have the print speed, 60 millimeters a second. So let's bump that down to 50, and travel is at 80. Temperature is 220, good for that ABS. So we'll leave it at that. And the platform at 105 seemed to work okay, even though it's a little hot, but it kind of needs to be for ABS to keep it from warping. And here we can control the cooling fan and a few choices of when it's on. And here you can also pause it at certain heights. So if you wanted to stop it because you needed to, do something to the print, you can actually put that in here. So that's pretty cool that they have that. All right, so we're just going to save configuration down there, push OK. And now we're going to create a GX file that the printer will understand. You're going to throw it on the desktop and click save, and it's slicing. And there we go. So it's done. And up here in this corner, we can see that it says that it's going to take 1 hour and 46 minutes, and it's going to take about 4.5 meters of filament. And if we want to see our slice parameters, we're going to click on that button there, and we can see all of our parameters that we put in. And so it made the file, and it's here on our desktop. So all we got to do now is throw it into our SD card. And when we open that up, we can see it right here in the front. But more importantly, guys, let's check out how we can do the dual color print. Now, before you can do that, you need a model that has 2 separate pieces. So I have this little squirtle here. So this is his body. And then we also have his shell. And if you can see, there are 2 separate pieces, so they can be 2 different colors. So what we need to do is assign the extruders to each one. So if we go down here to the extruder, click on the body. So this will be the right extruder. And then on the shell, we want this to be our left extruder. So you can see it turns green and our body is the silver. And this is an indication that the two different nozzles will be printing the two different parts. As you can see, our model is not together. So what we need to do is combine them. And the way you do that is you select the shell, and on the Mac here you just push command. While selecting one of the models, hold command and click the other model, and it'll highlight both of them. And so once they're highlighted, we're going to click on move, and then over here you see a reset button. So if you click the reset, it's going to combine them. So now that they're combined, it's a two-piece multicolor model. So now we can go through the same steps we did earlier, do our supports if we need the supports. But this model doesn't need it, obviously, so we're going to go straight to print. And here we can do the same thing, except now we need to remember that we have two nozzles. So we're going to assign the right and the left. So I'm going to do PLA for this one on both nozzles. Supports disabled, raft disabled. So all right, so everything looks pretty good. We'll OK it. So it's asking us if we want to add a wall, and we're going to say yes. So here it's asking us if we want to do a raft or a brim, so we can fix the wall into the plate. So I guess kind of all combine it together. Let's try brim, because I definitely don't like the raft. And now we're going to save the file, and it's going to slice it, and this is what it looks like. So we can see we have a little wall around our model. So we'll see how this works out. It looks kind of crazy, and there is 300 layers we can see up there. Let's go ahead and go down with the layers so we can see a little better what it's going to do. So we can see there's a brim on the very bottom, and there goes our multi-layer color. So it is purging around this wall, or building this wall in two different colors. So yeah, and this is how you do the dual extruder slicing in Flash Print. So we can see this is going to take 2 hours. The amount of material is going to take for each extruder, and here are our parameters. All right, so our dual color squirtle is done, and I'm feeling really good about this one. So it took 2 hours and 13 minutes. So the build plate is still warm, but since this is PLA, it should come off quite easy. Oh, okay, that was really easy actually. So far this build plate is definitely turning out just fine. Seems to stick and come off quite easy. And this is what our contraption looks like. So this is really interesting, the way it prints this wall around the model, and it seems to work. It does look all crazy on the outside of the wall, but looking on the inside, it doesn't look too bad. So instead of using a raft, we used a brim. So the outer part just comes right off. Now theoretically, I should be able to push on the model and it would pop right out. Let's see if that works. All right, there it goes. So this is what our shell looks like. And this is the model without touching it at all. So not too bad at all. We got a few hairs here and there. Let's see how easy it comes off. Okay, so relatively easy. So there was a little bit of blue that seeped into here. Still got a little brim around them. But overall, I would say it's actually quite respectable. So definitely a lot better than our first print. And I think that had to do a lot with the temperatures being too hot. But yeah, look at that. It's pretty good. So there's obviously some places that are definitely affected, and there's nothing we can do about it. Unfortunately, it was right here, we're next to his face. That might actually clean up a little bit better, but yeah, overall it worked, and it actually worked very well. So even though it's not perfect, I feel like this is definitely acceptable. And if there is like a little white dot on the blue somewhere and vice versa, you could technically just touch it up a bit and you pretty much would have a perfect model. And the print quality itself also looks really, really good. So this is 0.16 layer height, which turned out great. All right, well, I'm really happy how this model turned out here. So I'm pretty excited to print some more. And also I want to print a few more other things, and we'll check out the quality of those prints. All right, so I printed quite a few things, and overall I have to say this printer works well, and I didn't really have any kind of issues except for one particular thing that I'll get to in a second. So let's go ahead and start off with our color prints. So I printed 3 things in color, which one of them was this cube here that was on the SD card, and I tried to clean it up as best I could. I didn't obviously take that much time, but all the little dots you see and color leakage, that's actually infused into the plastic. So as we saw earlier, this model was definitely printed too hot, but still overall shows us what this printer can do. Then we saw the squirtle, so he cleaned up okay, I guess. This one's definitely the best one that turned out. It looks very nice. And then we have the Matterhacker's Astronaut in 2 colors, also blue and white. And the Astronaut turned out okay, I would say, I guess. But if you're going to be expecting this printer to do perfection, it's just not going to happen. Because of the way it prints and the way the nozzles keep seeping as the other nozzle prints, that is the main issue with the coloring here. So you can see on this side, we have a lot of seepage of the white. And on the other side, we have some seepage of the blue. Now with that said, the model still turns out quite nice. We can see here on the shoes that it looks pretty good overall, and you know, it might be able to be cleaned up a little better than this, but overall this is what I would expect to be realistic. Now there's certain models that will print better. The smaller they are, the better they'll print, because the nozzles won't overlap. Because what's happening is the white nozzle has to travel over into the blue areas, and that's what all these little dots are, going over the wall. And then as it goes over the wall, it's still seeping and then, you know, touching the blue. So for certain models this could work great, but as overall it's definitely not perfect. Now the big plus is we can see how the layers are sitting, and they're sitting very nice. So all the prints that I printed and sliced are 0.16 layer height, so pretty fine prints, and the layers are sitting very nicely. So overall it's very fun to print, and we can see here on the Squirtle we have a lot less color bleeding, and the reason why is because he's smaller. So now the Matterhacker Astronaut has a buddy, which is the Squirtle here. And so those are the color prints that I did. Now let's go ahead and look at our ABS printing. So I was really impressed with how the ABS turned out, starting with this test print that we did in the beginning. You guys can see it's very nice. Just looks very solid and very strong. So great layer adhesion. So I printed a Benchy, also in ABS. And this didn't turn out perfect, but it did turn out pretty good. We can see the layers are sitting really nice overall. Now there was some kind of issue here. Well, we can see there are some vibrations in the walls. It's not bad. So over here, nothing really turned out. And I think this is where the stitching was made, looks like. And if we look at the wall, it looks really good. The layers are sitting very nicely. For ABS, this is really nice. And we did have a little, looks like maybe cooling issue here or something. But yeah, overall, solid little Benchy. And it is an ABS, not bad. So if you're going to print more simple functional shapes, it definitely can do a really good job. Now the main thing to take away here is, here we can see even on the Benchy, that we don't have any kind of curling. It's flat. So there was no raft or anything. This was just straight to the bed, and the Benchy didn't warp or curl up or anything. So that just proves that this enclosure here really works, and the heated bed keeps it hot enough to be able to print ABS with no issues, looks like. All right, so let's look at some of our PLA models. So again, this was printed in PLA from the SD card. Also turned out quite nice. So here we have a pretty important print, which is a bearing, and to my surprise, it printed out perfect. So this bearing is quite hard to print because there's 6 gears and the tolerances are tiny between them. So the printer really has to put the layers down accurately for this to work. So once I popped this off the bed, I gave it a little spin and it just spun right up. And the gaps between the gears are tiny. Like you can see that it's not moving much. This is definitely more on the perfect side. So, and you can see there's no issues whatsoever with retractions or anything funny. So works very well for this gear. I was actually quite impressed with that. And here we can see our wall, also very nice. So it definitely puts the layers down very good, and not just that, the print itself feels solid. So it definitely bonds excellent. So then I wanted to print something a lot more fragile, and also in this silk silver, so we can see a lot better how this printer prints. Now silk film usually reveals everything. Like you can usually see all the vibrations and, you know, any imperfections really easily. So we can really see how good this little frog turned out. It's just almost perfect. And what's impressive is his belly here. This is usually never this good. So this printer was able to print this frog definitely above my expectations. And this is also 0.16 layer height, so very nice. I'm very impressed with this print here. Now I did forget another color print, and so the great thing about this cube, it can show us our axes very well. So here's our x-axis. We can see we have a little bit of ghosting there, and we can also see the color, and we got some blue right here that's leaked into silver. So Y has some ghosting also, and a bit of vibrations, and a little bit of color leakage on here, so not too bad. So here's our other X. You can see a lot more leaking, and our other Y, a little more color leaking here too. So, and this is the bottom, turned out really nice, and the top. Looks like I didn't have enough layers here. You can see the infill. But yeah, so this is kind of what you can expect from the vibrations and the ghosting, and also the dual color. So we can see two sides are worse than the other two. And so for our last two prints, I did spiralize mode. So let's go ahead and check out this spaceship here. So this is quite small, and the reason it's this small is because this is the maximum Z height that this printer can print. So you can see by this build plate that it's more wide than deep, and also not very tall, actually as tall as this vase here behind. So the spaceship turned out okay overall, but being this small, it did run into some issues. So our bottom looks great. Our walls look pretty good. Pretty nice, and actually you can tell here on these booster things, the filament is sitting really good. Now, there was a place here that it looks like it had under extrusion or something maybe. So that might have been just my filament catching on something. And that was actually something that I wanted to show you guys, and we'll do that here in a second. Nothing really to complain about too much. The layers are sitting good. There is some vibrations in the print. But then as we go up here, because this is also small and it is just one layer, so this is spiralized mode, one layer all the way up, we can see that either it was too hot or maybe the fan was blowing too hard or something, but we started to have some warpage over here. And then as we went up on this point here, it really all just melted away. And there's supposed to be a little ball here and it completely melted. Yeah, I wasn't expecting much out of this because of how small it is. So this is about typical for spiralized mode for this small of an item. So then I printed this large spiralized mode print, which is a vase, and this is a pretty cool vase, I guess. So it did a great job, and this is a rainbow filament, so it kind of changes color as it goes up. So yeah, if we look at the reflections, the layers are sitting beautifully. Like there's no issues with a layer bonding with this printer. Now there is a little bit of vibration and you can see it, but as far as fused together, it seems like as good as it gets, because even if I squish this, you can see it's really strong. So that just tells me that the layers have bonded very well. And the way you do spiralized mode is in the slicer, you just put perimeter as 1 and then infill 0, and then top layer you put to 1 because 0 it just doesn't let you, and that's how it prints and spiralized. So yeah guys, as you see, the prints overall are pretty nice, and it definitely prints quite good overall. But I do have to mention that this printer definitely feels a little aged, especially in 2020. And the reason I'm saying this is because of the loud stepper motors. You know, you can hear them, and most printers these days have eliminated that. That's the first thing. Second thing, there's no filament detection here, and probably not a huge deal because of the build size. I do love the touchscreen and the UI, very easy to use, but again, it doesn't have all the options that I would like to see, especially while you're printing. You can't adjust anything, seems like. And probably one of the biggest issues that I see, especially a seasoned 3D printer that would be interested in this printer, would definitely not appreciate that you are locked into the Flash Print software, and there's not much there you can adjust. Now, I'm not sure if you can use Cura or not on this thing. You might be able to, but it does generate its own unique code of .gx. But keep that in mind that you will have to use the Flash Print software to slice your models. So as far as the print heads, they work great. There's no issues there. The extruders work. The cooling fan seems to work just fine also, I guess depending on which extruder you're on. The heated bed is excellent, heats up really quick and gets extra hot. And because this printer is completely enclosed, it's a great option for printing more hotter materials like ABS, PETG, and others that require the heat, not just on the nozzle, also on the bed and the enclosure. So this thing seems to do a great job at that. And the build construction of this printer is great because it does have a metal frame, so it feels really solid and it doesn't flex at all. And I definitely love these handles on both sides that you can pick it up and move it around. Now, there's only one thing that I wish this printer did differently, and it's these spool holders and the way the filament is fed in. Number one, the spool holder is way too small to hold any kind of normal spool. So if I grab this Overture spool here, we can see this is pretty much how all the spools are. But FlashForge doesn't let you use these spools, and if you try to, let's say you put it in there, it doesn't stay in there. And as it spins, it kind of comes out and falls. So unfortunately, that is definitely not a good thing when you are forced to use only their type of spools, which have this special inner ring here that is thinner, that makes their spool holder clip in there just right, and it doesn't even come out. So for that part, I'm a little disappointed. Unless they're aiming for specific groups or manufacturers that would only use their product, this is definitely not friendly for everybody. And also the way these tubes feed is just not good at all. Like, it's really hard to tell, but it's a terrible angle. The filament's constantly pulling on the spool. Alright guys, well hopefully you enjoyed this video of the Creator Max by FlashForge. And this printer did come from FlashForge USA. So if you're interested in this thing, I'm going to have some links in the description. Check that out. And if you enjoyed 3D printing videos, I have a playlist of quite a few videos that I already did. And there's also a lot more to come, so stay tuned for more. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.